Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life.
What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast, where we talk about culture, trends, politics in the lovely city of Fort Worth, Texas. Here with Jimmy Sweeney, co-host. What's happening? We're going Zoom today because I'm in Brownsville, so technically Jimmy's home. But how you doing, Jimmy?
Good. Yeah, I mean, we were out and about yesterday, saw plenty of people dressed up for the massive anime convention that was here this weekend. And I feel like that just kind of popped up out of nowhere. Was not on my radar that was happening at all.
Yeah, like 10,000 people. It was like, that's what they're expecting these 3 days. My brother-in-law, a new resident of Fort Worth. I'm actually pretty proud of Fort Worth because, like, you know, my brother-in-law, he's kind of an outsider, an outcast, and I feel like he's already found like his space in Fort Worth, where he like went to like a magic meetup, and then he also like then went to anime with some people, and like I think it was just really cool that this like is happening for a strong community of people who really roll out for something like this. So that's super cool. 10,000 people in downtown Fort Worth.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. We saw people like walking from South Main over to the convention center. And I feel like it, you know, brought a little bit of energy to that area that has been lacking since the pandemic started.
Yeah. And by the way, again, like we are doing virtual because of, you know, I'm in Brownsville, Texas for work. It has been a crazy week of work. I thought I was going to have my flight at 8:30 p.m. Instead, it was 8:30 a.m., which really makes no sense. I don't know how I made that bad of a mistake. But we're here, and thanks for Jimmy's flexibility. He hopped on a Zoom, and he always sounds crispy good, so we're good to go still. But thank you for your flexibility, Jimmy. Also, how'd you feel about some Spotify shares and people sharing 817 pod on their list of things they listen to on Spotify?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And I was thinking like, okay, like if you're not aware, Spotify at the end of every year does your Wrapped, where it tells you your most minutes listened on music, artists, and podcasts. And so we were having people sharing and tagging us that we were on theirs. That was a really cool thing. We don't obviously like know the full scope of like who listens and how often people are listening. And so it was really cool to see us popping up as something that people are consistently visiting.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I think, you know, Spotify is, you know, nationally like 30% of podcast listeners. So, you know, you have a bunch of Apple people who knows who else is out there listening consistently. But I think it is cool. And it was just, you know, really neat to be up there with some like legitimate podcasts that like are ran by like newspapers and political correspondents, but people find space to talk about Fort Worth with you and I. So that's awesome. Yeah.
So thanks everyone for listening and engaging, and yeah, we love to hear from you. And if you're sharing your Spotify Wrapped and we're on there, please tag us.
You want to hit and talk about what Harrison tweeted us and the Star Telegram?
Yeah. So small change in the redistricting schedule. Last minute, the executive committee meeting this week was postponed. It was kind of out of nowhere, and apparently it had to do with so this meeting, they should have narrowed down the number of maps to like the about 5 that people would make public comment on, that we would like actually consider. And in the group of maps that were submitted were some done by city employees, and there was some question as to if they did that on like city employee time, or are they allowed to submit, and what does their First Amendment right look like as part of this? So we don't have a ton of answers around that. We just know that things are going to be delayed by probably a few weeks to a month. And once we have like a new updated schedule, we'll let everybody know about that. But that was just a little wrinkle that kind of came about last minute this week that we wanted to hit and highlight if you're wondering if why the meeting dates are going to change for public comment.
Yeah, and I know it sounds like a little wrinkle, but could it get messy? I guess because it's kind of hard to really do city council's time, because being a city council job is just it's kind of all the time. Like, it's just kind of, you're in events, you're in meetings, and how do you separate that out? And I mean, a lot of I know Kerry Moon had his own submission, plus he did one with Jared. So I know a lot of the ones that were kind of discussed were them working together as well and collaborating. So then, this idea of we don't know if they're allowed to do this or not just seems like, man, how did we not find this out a lot earlier? Because I know we went off a lot of their submissions, and they did submit, and spent time doing so.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder what the difference is between city councilors submitting and just a regular city employee coming up with one, because that's technically, all the city councilors are. It definitely feels like a little bit of a gray area. Interesting that this has never come up in a previous redistricting, and how it came up or why it came up. Just some unanswered questions from it that we know Harrison is tracking, and it'll be interesting to see if there's any significant difference to the timeline.
Yeah. Well, I know we're on the conversation of redistricting and maps changing. What is your take on Panther Island being out of Kay Granger's district?
Yeah, so obviously, Panther Island has been a sore spot for the city for about a decade. And a lot has come out about the water district over the past year, especially thanks to a lot of the reporting being done at the Fort Worth Report on it. But it just kind of came up out of nowhere that Panther Island was drawn out of Kay Granger's congressional district with these new redistricted maps. Nobody really knew this. Well, okay, quote unquote, nobody really knew that this was happening. It is going into Congressman Mark Veazey's district, which will be Texas 33. He's a Democratic congressperson. He had no idea it was coming. Obviously, with Republicans controlling the House and Senate in Texas, they were kind of left out of that conversation. So it is highly plausible, or maybe more implied, that Kay Granger would have had a hand in knowing that this was being moved out of her district. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a level of she's kind of been busted. Her brother or her son has kind of been busted for just a lot of the issues going on with the water district. And this project is obviously tied up in that. And it seems like a pretty convenient time to rid yourself of responsibility of it without anybody knowing until it was already done. Yeah.
I mean, maybe, wanting to hold legacy and not have Panther Island be so attached to her legacy. That makes sense. But it seems like it seems like there was also the idea of, because we have a Democratic administration, getting that federal funding quicker or more support on the project will be best if it was in VC's district, is what kind of I'm seeing here on the Fort Worth Report with State Rep Ramon Romero. So yeah, and looking at it, it's $1 billion project we've spent money on, 2-decade-old project. We've spent $1 billion of our people's money on this project.
Yeah, I guess we have 3 bridges to show for it now, and a lot of displaced businesses. But we do continue to spend money on it, and if this is what it takes to like get this project over the line, then like great. I have no issues with whose district it falls in as long as we're making progress on it. So if this is the answer, then like that's awesome. Hooray. Like I am excited that Kay Granger is not over this anymore, because we've seen where that's gotten us, and that's not very far. But it also feels like a convenient time to pass off the responsibility of it, and kind of, slyly say like, oh yeah, like I'll still keep my eye on it. Like it's still my thing. But you're not having to answer the questions about it anymore.
Yeah. The federal government has contributed less than a third of its $585.8 million required for the project. The total cost of the project is about $1.16 billion, with other contributions coming from local partners and tax increment financing zones, according to the most recent quarterly project reports. And your opinion is, I think, similar to why this is bipartisan, agreed, like everyone's supporting to get this across the line, is because we've just spent so much money and it's taking so much time. Let's just get this damn thing done. It's pretty much like where everyone's like Romero said, at this point, where we are committed, we've committed so many dollars that to not see it happen would be a perfect example of not being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, end quote. Fort Worth Report.
Yeah.
So it is cool though. Like once it's done, I think, it could have a good impression on outsiders or new people who move to Fort Worth and make, man, this is kind of clever and cool. Bring some nature, which I know is our big story, the new state park. Anytime you can integrate a city with water and nature, it's good for the city. Yeah,
for sure. And like we've complained before about how Fort Worth does not use its riverfronts very well, especially relative to like other cities in the state that have really great, vibrant riverfront areas. So like we're too far in to turn around. We need to see it get done. If this is the way that happens, then that's great. But Kay Granger, we don't see you passing the buck and trying to sneak out of this while you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, this might be a great transition. Let's see if it works. Speaking of sneaking out of things, Aaron Dean's trying to get his trial out of Tarrant County. His team has filed to change venue requests of Tarrant County Court Tuesday, asking the judge to allow the trial that was of Fort Worth police officer Aaron Dean to be moved out of Tarrant County. He fatally shot a Tatiana Jefferson October 2019. The change of venue motion says Dean will not be able to receive a fair trial in Tarrant County due to the extensive print and broadcast media coverage and considerable prejudice discussion surrounding Jefferson's death. So, so that's the jury selection for the murder case against Dean is scheduled to begin on January 4th. The trial is set to begin January 10th in Tarrant County. What is your initial thoughts?
So we first hit on this a few weeks ago when we had started to hear rumors that something like this might be coming. and we didn't know what side it would come from and what it would necessarily look like. I don't like, obviously, we are not legal experts, and we don't know that well how the judicial system functions in Texas. So, a change of venue from Tarrant County, does that mean it goes to Parker County? Like, that's obviously a good thing for Aaron Dean. Or does it go to Houston or Austin, where like we can maybe be a little bit more confident in the justice that should be coming? So I'm intrigued to see if how that plays out, if this motion gets filed or if this motion is granted. Obviously, there has been a lot of publicity around this. Part of that is because of how long it has taken for the trial date to be set. And I'm assuming that this would be another setback in the trial getting started. The other reason there's a lot of publicity is because you literally shot a woman sitting in her home for no reason, and you are a cop. Like, clearly there's going to be publicity around this, and the publicity is going to be negative because you murdered somebody. So it'll be, who knows how the judge takes it. What do you think?
Yeah. Where are you going to go in America and not have it have some type of influence? I mean, this is happening all over. I mean, look at the shooting in Michigan in schools to Kyle Rittenhouse in Wisconsin. I mean, like, guns and death and how America, legalizes guns and the autonomy that Texas has around who can grab a gun. And then you add in the, police force and all that. I mean, there's just so much passion around this where I just don't know where you would go where people wouldn't be emotionally charged on both directions. So your point on, like, if it was in Parker County, that to me is like, if anything like that really happened where it was able to go to a conservative area, then, I mean, we've already lost. Like, it's already over. Like, it's already like,
yeah.
And the other, right now, I'm like, I remember last episode we were like, yeah, it makes sense to be out of Tarrant, but now I'm thinking like maybe Tarrant is the best place, because what's so beautiful about Fort Worth is that we aren't a majority, party city, red or blue. We are a purple city. So I think, like, right, you can't go to Dallas in their eyes, or like in Dean's lawyer's eyes, but then you can't go to Parker either or something like that. So it's just like there's no true other county that says balances us, unless you're going to go maybe to out of state to do something.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. Like, Tarrant County is as split down the middle as you're going to find. And so realistically, it should be the ideal place for you to get as quote unquote split of a jury as possible. And exactly, wherever you go, you're not going to have, it's impossible to find an impartial jury when it comes to police violence. Like, I don't think that there are very many people out there walking into jury duty just being like, yeah, like, I don't feel one way or the other about police shooting people. So agreed. It will be very intriguing to see if this is granted and where it ends up at. So Dean's defense team also filed 11 other motions. I don't know that any of these are like out of sorts or that interesting. A lot of it was just asking for the names of witnesses and people that have testified to grand juries, which I think that in general they're anonymity is and should be protected, so that they don't face potential backlash. But other than that, it seemed like these are all pretty like straightforward things that you would expect a defense team to request. Oh, no, actually, request that the jury shall not be allowed to separate while they are deliberating. I wonder, does that mean you like can't even go to the bathroom? Like what is that? If you can't separate, like is anybody allowed to leave
Yeah,
for any sort of time?
I have no idea how this world works. But to me, a lot of this seems like you said. You kind of came off and said, "Oh, it like all seems reasonable," but it just sounds like some of these seem like they want to know the information before it like surprises them. But isn't that like your job as a lawyer is like to be prepared for anything that could surprise you? Like,
Yeah,
it's like they want all the things. Like, if you're gonna say anything bad about Aaron Dean, we want to know before you say it. If you're gonna use any evidence that we don't have, we want to know before you use it. It just seems like they're asking for a lot too, so they can prepare, because they know all they're able to do here is how do we rebuttal to everything we messed up on. Because I don't know. I mean, if I'm Aaron Dean, and I'm sitting in trial. I can't imagine. Like, I know I did something wrong, right? And I deserve some type of punishment. So it's like this weird, like, the fact that this has taken so many years is like, do you become less connected to what you did so long ago? I don't know. I just feel like it just has to be a weird situation to be like, you're like trying to get yourself off of this the best way possible. But I would imagine you would also think you did something wrong. But the way they're talking about it, they don't feel that way. They say the neighbor said it was a wellness. The neighbor said it was a wellness check, and they're saying that it's an open door, an open private property check, if you would, which then creates a different level or radar on a cop, because if you call it in because it's open door, then they're in a different mode than if it's a wellness check. But the then neighbor says that he called it in as a wellness check. So I don't know. I think that's all these dots to want this information. Seems like they're just trying to protect themselves because they think people are positioning it in a way that's not true.
yeah. Which, like, he was there, he did it. Like, what sort of gotcha evidence or information can actually be out there that you wouldn't be able to have yourself going in, because you have the person that did it in front of you who had all of the information in front of them. Yeah. Anyways, we'll like keep y'all posted as any more information comes out about it. It really would be a big disappointment to have anything continue to push this date out further, though, which I assume that a change of venue would do.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that they're starting like the jury selection in a month if we don't find out for like 2 more weeks where it's going to be. I assume it would go to near like the bottom of the docket, wherever else it ended up. So yeah. Well, cool. Let's move into the big story. This is front page of the Star Telegram this Sunday, and it's something that we've seen articles about a couple times over the last few months. But the new Palo Pinto Mountain State Park is slated to open to the public in 2023. It's about an hour west of Fort Worth, and it is a huge new state park coming to the area. 5,000 acres of rolling hills. If the park were the park will give Texans as to North Texas's first state park in more than 2 decades. I mean, this is a big deal for us. We obviously hate on Fort Worth's lack of nature, enough. I would say an adequate amount. And so having another state park in the area is a huge thing for helping spread out the traffic that comes from Texas's growing population. Like as we have more people moving here, more people that are interested in hiking, especially people moving from California or other areas of Texas that are more known for their outdoors uh, activities. Like we need to have space for those people to, for everyone to have access to amenities. So this is something I'm really excited about. EJ, I think you are too.
Yeah, and you said 5,000 acres of space. In context, Dinosaur Valley State Park is 1,587 acres, and Mineral Wells is 3,282 acres. So bigger than the other real options around us. I didn't check Cedar Hill and other options, but of recreational space. And so I think, yeah, it's cool, and they're selling it. I mean, they're like, man, we believe this could be the hill country of DFW. I'm like, whoa, all right, come on now, that's that's cool, because like I love hill country. One of the things I miss of not living back in San Antonio, Austin area was going out to the hill country and drinking some wine and just having a good weekend. So I mean, now I even think about, man, like what kind of capacity can be built out there long term from not just the state park, but just that county as a whole, providing kind of that destination experience. And a lot of people tell me that's already kind of out there. I've never really been out that way. But it seems like there's some things in that bar. I don't know if you saw the bar in the newspaper about like Mule Ear Bar, but it seems like a wicked bar to just like, I don't know, have a beer in.
Yeah, Mineral Wells has been slammed. Like camping spots booking 3 months in advance, just really like putting a strain on the resources there and the nature there, as well as making it feel inaccessible. Like if you can't just pop out there on a weekend, like you've got to plan 3 or 4 months in advance, like that doesn't necessarily feel like an asset to the area as much as it is planning like a vacation almost. And so having another area that they think could eventually see 75,000 visitors each year. I think it could go a long way towards out of state people potentially getting a different perspective of this area if they start looking for amenities like this in North Texas and now have something really big and resounding that's being sold and marketed well to go to.
Yeah, no, for real. Yeah, it'd be awesome. Yeah, and because when you want to hike, like it's supposed to feel like you're getting out of having to schedule things, and it's just
right.
You just want to go on a whim. So I totally get what you're saying there. And by the way, it's called Mule Lip Bar, but there was a shooting in 2008. Basically, people causing ruckus, and someone went back to his truck and said, "Hey, you know what? It seems like a classic Texas brawl in a bar." But Mule Lip Bar is what it was about. Pretty crazy. But yeah, man. I mean, I think that's really, big story, but like it's pretty straightforward and I think exciting, but nothing too crazy. And I know we always talk about how having nature is important for a thriving city, and it seems like that's happening.
Yeah, and I think an interesting piece is that like Texas is a desirable place for people to move because there is a lot of land. And so we have area to develop. We also have area to continue building housing that is generally more affordable than the majority of the rest of the country. And so, but like a lot of that land isn't necessarily nature. And so us like actually taking the time to highlight the like natural areas that we have instead of just the empty land that we have is a really cool thing, something I really appreciate.
One of the other stories in Star Telegram mentioned how, and I just looked it up as well, we're the 45th state when it comes to how much of the state is owned by private property. So 95.8% of Texas is owned by private property. So a lot of the challenges as well, when you look at the states that have really strong parks, obviously there's less private property because places like Alaska, Wyoming, Montana, like these states so then they're able to invest and be thoughtful. And so it is really cool and almost like very rare because the context there was around like we have all these spaces and all these different types of nature, but when you now have to convince people to value nature over selling their land to the next person who wants to build more apartments or a McDonald's, it becomes like, I think, difficult in Texas. And so there was like this fear around how will we respond to climate change? How will we respond to the growth of our population? And how will we preserve nature? And I think the story was even about a guy who owns private property and he's really into keeping his private property for nature purposes. But I thought that was an interesting stat around how much of Texas is private property.
Yeah, definitely. Total. I remember reading that too.
Yeah. And hey, man, I mean, what's cool for everyone, I don't know how far, like we're 30-ish minutes into this pod and me and Jimmy do not see each other. And so we just like are kind of like, usually we're sitting right next to each other. I hear his adorable laugh. I laugh, and then we just kind of go from there. So if you hear any, awkward or like, man, you guys don't seem like you're thriving. We've been that 1 week really felt like a year off, by the way, as well. I'm going to be honest there. Like I feel like I forgot I even did this as a part-time thing. I was like, oh yeah, I guess I was a 817 co-host with Jimmy just after not doing this for 1 week. I really fell off. So coming back, forgive us as we grease the wheels or the bearings, whatever this saying is there. But you want to move to wins and losses, my friend?
Yeah, let's do it. Go ahead. What's your loss?
My loss is, and I guess we were trying to decide if this was going to be a short story or not, but really it's the lack of Democratic talent that is at least putting their hat in the ring. But at least it feels like, but mainly, and then also just like how we have Beto here in Fort Worth. He was in Fort Worth this last weekend on Friday, Wild Acre, getting people excited. Me and Jimmy talked about how we didn't know until he posted it on Twitter. So there was like no prep, I felt like. And then even today's Sunday, it's Sunday at 2 p.m. And I've scoured all through, like we do every Sunday, all the different news sites. And everything this weekend is about, we hosted the anime convention, which is super dope, by the way, and we're all game for. But there's nothing about Beto being here. And I just think that's super odd and super weird that the Sunday paper doesn't have that someone who's running for governor was in our city and there's not like a report about it. It happened on Friday, so it's been 2 days. Like, I understand if you didn't get something on Saturday because that's usually a slower day. But the Sunday paper, you don't have anything on Beto. And then the other part was about the loss was Deborah Peoples is running for judge, and so is another guy from Arlington. I think last name was Sutton. Let me check that back. But I just think that's also very hard to do, is to win the county as a Democrat, as we haven't been able to win the city.
Yeah, and it is an interesting theme of like how many times are we going to do a Deborah Peoples versus Betsy Price election? And like you were looking at like down ballot elections after the filing period ended. And like a lot of these are running, a lot of these seats will have Republicans running unopposed. And it's just like we don't have when Texas looks at Georgia, a state that built a ton of infrastructure, raised up a lot of and developed a lot of talent for the Democratic Party, and like finally saw a breakthrough in the presidential election as well as the special Senate elections. Like, even though Texas's population continues to trend blue, and maybe at this point, actually, I would assume is blue, whether that's reflected in voting numbers or not. Like, we're so far away in a deep roster of people and infrastructure, whether that's communication infrastructure across the state, people developing talented, young, passionate individuals to continue like rising up and running for races, whether that's locally or statewide. You start to get a sense of like how far behind Democrats actually are. And yeah, for like there to be no communication or really like interest around Beto making a stop in East Fort Worth this weekend was just really striking. Like, found out about the event like 2 or 3 hours beforehand. I assume that, that was a similar situation for most people, or maybe they are literally finding out right now. But it just feels like Texas Democrats are very far behind at moving the needle much at all, which maybe also lends itself to why nobody is running against Beto for a Democratic nomination, because it feels a little bit like a lost cause. Yeah, just like kind of weird that there is no publication around it at all, when we have seen articles published around like when Amy Coney Barrett's bus tour came through, like Star Telegram had an article about that.
Big facts.
So like we've seen that go the other way. Yeah, just kind of weird that nothing came up about it.
Yeah. I can't, here we go. No, that's August 27, 2018. I'm like, I can't even find like, what was the speech? Like, what did he say? I mean, because he needs Tarrant County. Tarrant County is vital. But
yeah,
so like,
I haven't seen videos about it at all.
No NBC5 video. I can't find. It's just odd. I don't know. It had to be one of those things. You know how like promoters, I don't know, people who promote clubs, and they're like, oh, it's going to be lit. It's going to be awesome. And then like they just don't show what actually happened because no one showed up. So maybe that's what it was. They're like, we're just not going to talk about this and go to the next stop. There's 50 people here. We can't put this on TV. Because there's nothing. So, and that stinks. Maybe he'll come back though. He might have to come back.
I'm sure he will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's your loss?
My loss. So we covered maybe like a month ago about how McClatchy, the owner of the Star Telegram, was no longer going to be accepting some subsidized reporters from a grant because that grant spoke out about venture capitalists owning newspapers and media companies. And we had talked about how that could potentially end up meaning that environmental reporter and Arlington reporter would no longer be working for the Star Telegram. They didn't explicitly state that that's why they were leaving the Star Telegram, but those reporters announced this week that this past week was their last week working for Fort Worth Star Telegram. So some inference in connecting the dots there. It seems like that is probably a driving decision behind that. It still seems like those people will be reporting on those topics, yet to see where or with whom. But that's a sad thing, especially when like Arlington and the environment were like top of the headlines this week.
All week, yeah.
With Arlington having that major vote on allowing oil drilling 50 feet from a preschool. So it definitely like it sucks to lose positions like that because of, I don't know if it's the arrogance or schadenfreude of venture capitalists with their newspapers, but it nonetheless it is a bummer that the Fort Worth Star Telegram is losing those two people.
Yeah, and they said, hey, put in your 2 weeks, every story you ever wrote that you have left on the table, we're printing that sucker this week, because I swear this was the Arlington Star Telegram this week. Everything was about Arlington. And so, but then all the stories were good. Like you said 50 feet, for those who, we are a factual based podcast and we strive to be right. It was 600 feet, but 600 feet from a daycare. Like this is like really important information that I learned about Arlington, because being East Fort Worth, you kind of get like, you feel a part of Arlington in a way. So it was like important information to know. So I just hope they still invest in that story and where does it go. And find ways to see that what they did this week was actually really valuable. Yeah,
absolutely. I'll hop into my win for the week, and that is Nia Taylor Clark won the pitch competition at Fort Worth's Global Entrepreneurship Week last month for her concept Blacklit, which is a monthly book subscription box that features the work of Black authors and Black entrepreneurs. She is working on building a team right now, but they have a warehouse in Farmers Branch with 4 part-time employees. Say that subscriptions will grow to 500 this month, though typically throughout the year they're doing 200 to 250 a month. A mini mailer is $39.99 a month, and it includes 1 book by a Black author, a custom bookmark designed by a Black artist, and a shirt designed by a Black creative. The big bundle includes that plus 3 to 5 additional products from Black-owned businesses. Also comes with discussion probes on the book for journal entries or way to engage with friends reading the same box. There's boxes for fiction, nonfiction, children's books, another box for faith traditions. I think this is an awesome idea. I love that something like this is what won Global Entrepreneurship Week's pitch competition. And I'm really excited to see where this goes. And the Oprah magazine selected Blacklit as one of the 25 best book subscription boxes. So I think this is super cool, and I'm really excited to see where this goes, but just wanted to give it a small highlight now.
Seems like a perfect like Christmas setup. If you need to do Christmas, it seems that you want to do local and support entrepreneurs. Like this seems like a great package to do for somebody.
Yeah.
And what's cool about it, what's cool is like, what I love about it is like, people can just say, oh, it's just like books and box and like that doesn't seem that innovative, but the way she's curating is innovative. And you have to think, what 2 really big companies sounded very similar to this? Jeff Bezos spent 8 years selling books, and Netflix was shipping DVDs for 10 years. So you just never know what can happen for Blacklit and this awesome CEO, Taylor Clark.
I think that this is a really cool curated concept. And so I think it's awesome that Global Entrepreneurship Week honored her.
Yeah. And speaking of, since we're on the topic, let me just get that and then we're talking about entrepreneurship here. I think this is a good like shout out. There's two other stories around and like companies moving to Fort Worth. Old Gringo Boots from San Diego is moving to Fort Worth. That is, they're going to have, I want to say, 5,300 square foot, 3-story building, and they are going to employ, I want to say, around 150 to 250 people. And then there was also one with a South Africa base company called SmartCap, who plans to expand their operations to Fort Worth, creating more than 250 full-time jobs. So that's really cool. So, starting like $68,000. So really good salary jobs. So shout out there to the other economic development happening in Fort Worth.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for listening. We are excited to dive back in after our 1 week break. We hope y'all enjoy the holidays. I know we went out to Nickel City yesterday, and their Christmas setup is awesome. If you get the chance to make it in before the end of the year when they still got all their Christmas decorations up, I highly recommend it. Go check out the big tree in Sundance Square. Hope you enjoy the holidays, and we're looking forward to hearing from everybody.